Hello everyone, VAHALLAWEEN here. Happy VAHALLAWEEN week. As you can see, I am dressed as the baddest witch in town, Hermione Granger. As you can tell by the title, I will be talking about 10 underrated horror movies. Now this is just my opinion. These are movies that I think are not as loved or appreciated inside and outside the horror community. These are in no particular order. They're just in random order. So let's just get to it. For number 1, we have The Final Girls. This is a meta-horror comedy film about a young woman grieving the loss of her mom, a famous scream queen from the 80s, is pulled into the world of her mom's most famous movie. Reunited, they must survive the film's killer. The director, Todd Strauss-Schulson, effortlessly incorporates horror tropes, allowing the characters to cleverly use these cliches to survive. Despite the occasional bad CGI, there really isn't much to complain about this movie. The mother-daughter relationship was written in a way that allowed the audience to care about them in the short period of time we saw them together. Stereotypical characters were given a backstory and depth, which makes this film stand apart from other horror comedies. With great cinematography, camera angles, and music score, The Final Girls is one of my favorite movies on this list. Plus, it has the most beautiful death scenes I've ever watched in my life. Number 2 is All About Evil. An awkward librarian, desperate to save this family business, releases a series of grisly short films that seem a little too real. This is a modern-day retelling of A Bucket of Blood, but with drag queens. Drag queens! How can you get much better than that? It is shot like a B-movie with intentional exaggerated acting and low-budget special effects. It's full of classic horror tropes and character archetypes. I love the casual references to horror classics like Elvira, Friday the 13th, and The Shining. Natasha Lyonne chews the scenery every time she's on screen. Horror film buffs will enjoy the opening credits, which pays homage to 50s and 60s horror films. The movie isn't scary, but it's fun and campy and combines comedy and the macabre perfectly. It's destined for a cult following. Number 3 is It Stains the Sands Red. In the middle of a zombie apocalypse, a troubled woman with a dark past is stranded in the desert and finds herself tailed by a lone relentless zombie, which stalks her every move. This film has got to have the slowest chase scene ever. This film stands apart from other zombie films of the past. The protagonist, Molly, isn't your typical final girl. She's rough around the edges and makes poor decisions that puts her life in danger, and it makes you lose sympathy for her a bit. The center of the film has less to do with zombies and more to do with Molly's personal growth throughout her journey. I enjoyed the relationship shift between Molly and the zombie. I wasn't expecting the switch. There was an element of sympathy for the zombie, and you actually start feeling for it. This was the second zombie movie that made me cry. The first was A Train to Busan. For number 4, we have House of a Thousand Corpses. 2 young couples traveling across the backwoods of Texas search for roadside attractions and end up as prisoners of a bizarre and sadistic backwater family. This film was directed by Rob Zombie, and honestly, he left a sour taste in my mouth after what he did to Halloween. But I'm glad I gave him a second chance, because this was a fun, campy, and offbeat horror comedy that pays homage to horror classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Freaks, The Evil Dead, and horror director Brian De Palma. This was Rob Zombie's first movie, and you can tell this was a love letter to horror. There's a mix of his grungy music video cinematography and classic cinematography, and that slow motion scene towards the end was shot perfectly. For number 5, we have Peeping Tom. A disturbed filmmaker kills women using a camera to film their dying expressions of terror. Released just 2 months before Hitchcock's Psycho, Peeping Tom uses the same themes of voyeurism, eroticism, and horror that repulsed critics in 1960. This was the first film to put the audience in the killer's POV. Thank you, Scream 4. This added a level of immersion and intensity, and the dramatic build-up of the music score heightened the suspense even more. The killer's calm, charming, but uneasy presence makes him terrifying due to the uncertainty of his actions. This is one of the best psychological horrors ever made. For number 6, we have Tragedy Girls. This film follows two death-obsessed teenage girls who use their online show about real-life tragedies to send their small Midwestern town into a frenzy and submit their legacy as modern horror legends. This is a twist on the slasher genre. It shows how desensitized society is to violence and gore. This film cleverly uses social media as a filter in order to make it seem as though violence is intangible. I love how the film made Sadie and Michaela's friendship the main focal point instead of centering the plot around a romantic relationship. It adds more depth and character to the story. The main character's real-life friendship was the key to the success of this film. Their chemistry made the constant banter between the two seem natural and made the pacing flow smoothly. Number 7 is Better Watch Out. Honestly, the best way to describe this film is if Home Alone had a really fucked up brother. On a quiet suburban street, a babysitter must defend a 12-year-old boy from intruders, only to discover it's far from a normal home invasion. The characters really make this film what it was. Most of the time, kids in movies are annoying and are only out there for filter, but all 3 of the young actors did an amazing job. They all portrayed a right array of emotions and made them believable. You felt what they felt and were able to sympathize with them, making for a heartbreaking and satisfying journey. Olivia DeJonge and Ed Oxenbould, who play Ashley and Garrett, work together in M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit. They have such great chemistry on the screen, and I hope they continue working together in the future. I love home invasion movies, but most of them are often cheesy and poorly written, but Better Watch Out is one of the better ones. They had character development and a story arc that kept you invested in the film from beginning to end. Number 8 is A Tale of Two Sisters. After being institutionalized in a mental hospital, Korean teen Sumi reunites with her beloved sister, Soo-young. As Sumi and Soo-young try to resume their regular lives, strange events plague the house, leading to surprising revelations and a shocking conclusion. A Tale of Two Sisters was adapted into an American film called The Uninvited. The American film was definitely dumbed down for the American audience. No offense, I'm American, I can say that. The film first presents itself as a run-of-the-mill haunted house story, but it soon turns into a complex and engaging plot. It's a beautiful mix of drama and horror. The cinematography and the music only added to how beautiful this film is. And the camera work actually provided some of the foreshadowing to the plot twist, which may be difficult to notice in the first watch. But it blew my mind how intelligently the director, Kim Ji-won, used the camera to help tell the story. Okay, we're almost done with number 9, Scream 4. 10 years have passed, and Sidney Prescott, who has put herself back together, thanks in part to her writing, is visited by Ghostface yet again. Known as the last movie Wes Craven directed before his unfortunate death, Scream 4 is the most divided amongst the fans. Some even putting it below Scream 3. Yeah. Ever since it came out, Scream 4 has been my second favorite movie in the franchise. Number 1, obviously going to the original. The opening of the movie accomplished what the original Scream did, which was to define a genre. Even though the rest of the movie didn't give us any new rules like it promised, they do make fun of torture porn, found footage, and remakes. Ghostface is incredibly vicious in this movie. The kills are gory, and I love it. I also love the back and forth between Ghostface and Sidney. It's like a game of cat and mouse. I absolutely adore Kirby, played by Hayden Panettiere. She represents the die-hard horror fans who can answer any trivia question about any horror movie. And Emma Roberts made the third act in this film just as good, if not better, than the third act in the original. Please don't come for me. Just my opinion. Okay, the final movie on this list, number 10, Christy. Violent thugs terrorize a young woman who's alone on a college campus for Thanksgiving weekend. Again, I love the cat and mouse type movies. I love the suspense of not knowing when or if the killers are going to catch their prey, or how the prey is going to survive the chase. I enjoyed how the main protagonist of the movie, Justine, doesn't make dumb decisions. Every question that the viewers have about a decision is answered. Justine seems like the typical helpless final girl, but when put in a fight-or-flight situation, she fights, and she fights hard. Alright, so that is my 10 underrated horror movies. Tell me what you thought. Do you agree, disagree? Tell me in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this list. I will be doing more lists like this in the future. I think this is really fun. I really enjoyed putting this list together and doing like a little mini review of a bunch of movies in one video. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss when I post. It's been Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa.